Here we are, just about 15-20 minutes drive outside Carlisle, rural Cumbria, and the benign and beautiful River Eden behind us. When you stop and think about how much water fell from the sky during Storm Desmond, enough rain fell in 1 minute to fill the entire Albert Hall. So how do we manage that kind of water? There's lots of things, for instance, hard engineered flood defences. They're obviously working with nature, slowing the flow. Managing flooding is a jigsaw puzzle. So when all else fails, when things are overtopped, when the ground is saturated and overwhelmed, what can we do at a property level to reduce the impact so we can get back in sooner after we've been flooded? Now, one of the showcase homes here is just literally meters away from the river. It's been flooded before in 2005, and this time the poor homeowner has no insurance. 19 months later, she's still living in alternative accommodation and no way, no financial way to put this property back. So we as a showcase are going to put this home back in a flood resilient way for her, so when she does flood again, and yes she will sadly, that the home is impacted to its most minimum level by the interventions that we put in. Common problem that I find when I'm travelling around talking to people at risk from flooding. They've made the investment in property resilience products, but they don't store them appropriately. And these products were bought post 2005, and obviously they were overtopped in this severe flood, but they could, in a lesser flood, work well to reduce the impact. So what advice would you give if you were in this situation, this site? What would you say to the homeowner about storing the products?
Well, absolutely, these can be key in a flood of certain magnitudes, and they really should be stored in a place that's protected from the elements. You can see here that you've got a sill that provides the junction between the wall bracket and the actual guard, and that's perished and the seal's gone. That's the key point of the barrier. So the barriers need to be maintained and kept in a purpose-built shed. You've got ideal opportunity here to put a specific shelter and store them there. They need to be maintained and tested as well.
It's really important that, because I've been to a house where the owner had said that the products had failed, but when I looked at the products, a mouse had eaten all through the seals because they've been kept outside. So our advice is, if you do make an investment in this kind of kite mark product, is always to be careful as to where you store it somewhere dry and away from severe sunlight, so the garage even, or as you've just said, a purpose-built shed. Right, Andrew, we've been here for quite a long time, haven't we? If you want to give me some pointers as to what you think could be done to make the outside of this home more resilient to flooding.
Sure. Well, firstly, we can see from here we've got some flood barriers over doors, but an additional measure may be to add actual flood resilient doors. So changing doors to the front entrance and over to the side there. In addition, it's key to look at the maintenance of the building and on an ongoing basis as well. So every year checking sills around windows. We've got a sill here between the stonework and the window frame, and it's split, and it's an obvious route of ingress through there.
In a heavier flood, yes, deeper flood.
Indeed, there we've got the same sills, and I can see a split at the top, so it's important that they're adhered to both surfaces to keep that sill as best as possible. In addition, to the rear of the property, we see the pointing to the stonework is fouled in places. There's holes through it. Again, an easy route of ingress for water, and it will get wherever it can. It will find a way in if there is a way in. So those are just some of the things that we can look at outside. So with the flood doors, maintenance of the property in terms of mastic and the walls. In addition, potentially we could look to use a waterproof membrane or application to the outside of the stone, which repels water and keeps water out. A few considerations we need to make in terms of condensation, interstitial condensation and the like, but potentially an option to look at to keep water off the wall.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm with Anne, and she's been telling me about her previous flood, and for personal reasons, the flood that happened in 2005, Anne wasn't able to move back into her home, fully move back in prior to the Storm Desmond flood. So really we're going to focus on what happened during Storm Desmond, and what you found and what happened to you, and how you left your home and the help you got afterwards, and the fact that you haven't got any insurance, so you've got to have to put this all back until we came along by yourself.
Sounds daft saying I haven't got any insurance, but the insurance company, I paid a few instalments after the first flood in 2005, paid a few, which was 100 and something a month, and then they said, we're stopping your insurance and we're going to put it up, and it was £1,000 a month.
And you obviously couldn't afford that.
Well, I thought £1,000 a month, if I can save that money and then use it if there is a flood, but you say that, but you might not save enough money.
No,
that's the thing.
Absolutely. And then you said you had something through the post offering you a quote. Just before the flood.
3 weeks before this Storm Desmond, I got a quote saying £175 per month, and I thought I'll do that. Then the rain came, and my property was the garage door was sanded down, ready to be varnished. The outside, the big gate, that was pressure washed. There was green on it, very green, and it was going to be varnished, some sort of varnish put on. And the rain just kept every day. So I moved my things in instead of finishing that off, because the water was going right up the garage door, and it was getting higher and higher. And I thought, when's this going to stop and dry out? So I moved all my things into the property, clothes and belongings. The garage I filled, ready so as I can arrange them in the house.
And move in properly.
And
you left them on the floor, didn't you? You didn't put them.
Yes, I did. I left them downstairs.
Yes, on the floor.
On the floor, inside a cupboard, and I crammed the cupboard full. And then, lo and behold, the flood came, and I was devastated, really, because I just thought of all my good things that were sitting on the floor.
So you hadn't got lots of furniture in because you hadn't moved back in properly?
The furniture that was there was already there. It had been there for a number of years, but there was dresses and things, and they just collapsed and fell to pieces. They were just lying, picked them up, and they just fell to pieces.
So you had to throw them out.
Just throw them out.
So when you realised you were going to flood, you hadn't signed up for a flood warning because you hadn't been there long enough really to sign up for an Environment Agency flood warning. How did you realise that you'd got to move, that it was getting that bad and dangerous for you? Did it come up quickly? Did a neighbour come and say to you, I think you'd better get out and move as quickly as you can? Because you are in a very rural location, aren't you?
Well, I was actually in Carlisle at the time. I think I was here, and the rain was coming down, but nobody really said anything about any flooding to me. I never did.
So you weren't at the house when it flooded then? You just went back and...
I went there when somebody said that it looks as though it's going to flood. It's coming up high down near the Civic Centre, down by the River Eden, the bridge. And so I went down and had a look, and it was coming up pretty high, and I thought, I wonder what it'll be like down at Brocklewath. So I went down there and had my Wellingtons on, and it was sort of up to the top of my Wellingtons, and I was looking through the window into the house at my things on the floor, and I thought, I wonder if it's going to get any higher, and it did. It got higher than the first flood in 2005, 8th of January.
And you told me it got up as high as the windowsill.
Yes, it just went past the windowsill, so that meant in the kitchen it went just above the worktops, whereas last time it was below the worktop. So this time it was above the worktop. So that meant it went into my ovens, my microwave, everything on the top. So those would be sort of loose at the back. So that meant the worktops.
And we were saying a lot of people don't realise what flood water is like. You said it was brown and gritty and filthy, and that was what caused the devastation, all the stuff it brought with it, not just the water, but
It's okay.
The
It's
brown.
just water, but it's coming everything. It's the sewage and the river, and it's just like mud. It dries onto all your goods. So when you pick your photographs up or something, it's half dry, half wet. Wet in the middle, round the edges is dry, curling up all your photos, everything, your clothes, your jeans, everything's covered in mud. Oh, at the time, I walked away from it. I just said, that's it. I just walked away.
So when you went back to your home for the first time after the flood water had gone, obviously, because it wouldn't have been safe before then, because it's so rural, isn't it,
Yes.
where you are? What were your feelings when you walked through the door? Were you absolutely gutted, I should imagine, weren't you?
Yeah, I didn't know what to do that time.
Were you alone?
Well, yes, I was at the time. When I walked in. Then I heard about the CFF. Some people came to see me and phoned me, and they said, would you like some help from the Muslim Society? And I just said, yes, please. And they came out and they cheered me up a bit, and they said, it's okay, we'll give you mops, buckets and things. And I thought, okay, so I have to get somebody to help me. And they said, no, we'll help. We'll bring a team of people and we'll clean the place up. And we did. And I felt as though it was just part of life and it would work out. But I'm still now here in this position because they left and nothing happened much after that.
Because you have no flood insurance and you had no money to put it back.
Yes, yeah.
Isn't that nice that the community spirit when something like that happened? Because how many of them came to help you?
I think there could have been maybe 4 or 5, and then they got a company from, was it Liverpool? Man and his two sons came and dismantled all the walls, took all the
all the plaster off,
plaster and everything off
to enable it to dry.
It didn't take long to do it. What, maybe 2 days?
And that's the state it still is in 19 months later.
That's it, yes. Because you get that much help at the beginning, you just think that it's gonna go on, and then it's gonna get built up. They said they would come and build it back up, the walls, but I don't know what happened after that.
So
maybe too much for everybody.
Yes, because there's so many people flooded, and you in a remote area, sort of very isolated, and not like Warwick Road where there's multiple houses all together, where all the media are.
Yes.
You were in the middle of nowhere.
To your neighbour, and you can talk.
Yes.
Down here, you're not next to a neighbour. You're just next to one neighbour, and if the neighbour isn't very pleased with something you're doing, you can cause an argument.
Yes, I know.
Like I used a skip, the wrong skip. And I got into trouble for that. I didn't realise. I thought the council had brought it down for me, and I used the wrong skip. But never mind. These things happen.
So here you are, 19 months on. You're still not able to move back home, and then we're obviously going to come in and refurbish the house for you.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Oh, I couldn't believe it. I actually sat back, and then when you said to me, "Are you pleased about it?" I couldn't speak.
You didn't know, because you'd gone quiet on the end of the phone when
the tears were just rolling down. It brought a lot of stress out.
That's lovely. That is lovely, and we hope that we've got a board meeting next week that we can decide what to do. Obviously, it won't be done overnight, but we hope to be able to give you back a flood resilient house, so you can move back in and feel a lot safer than you do now, and also know that if the flood water does come in again, the damage will be a lot less to your home, and you'll be able to get back in sooner than you could this time.
As time goes on, you think, what should I do next? Will I be wasting my time? What do I clean next? Will the flood come today, tomorrow? Will it come?
You live very concerned that it's going to flood again, don't you?
Well, I do when I look at the water coming up. When it rains lately, the water comes right up. And I mean, these pictures are from 2003, and on these pictures here, the river is right up.
Anyway, thank you very much for taking time to talk to me, and we'll take you down, and I'll inform you every step of the way as to what's happening and when we're starting work, and we'll need some water, obviously, so we'll need to sort some water. Thanks very much for talking to me, and here goes.
Yeah. Okay.
New house refurbished. Right.
Lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, Ian, so I've given you a complicated one here.
Yeah.
This isn't straightforward by any means, as lots of houses now have timber frame plasterboards. So thinking outside the box, what would be your solution to make this house more resilient?
Right, we've got some interesting challenges, as you said, Mary. We've got several types of construction. So we've got a timber stud with some oak panelling and some timber framework. Then we've got some plasterboard and then some blockwork. And then we've got plasterboard, insulation and blockwork. So we've got all types of problems here. So what we found is this oak framing has survived and has the oak boarding. The plasterboard's had to be removed. So there's ideas we can do around possibly using a resilient wallboard. So that's a board that would survive the flood. But we have to consider how we dry behind it, and issues like that. The second thing is we think about perhaps keeping an oak in certain areas, because as long as we can get to the oak from both sides, we can dry it. So it's a combination of a possibly board that can survive, an oak that can survive, but maybe sacrificial plasterboard somewhere else. So I think it's got to be a mix, because there isn't one solution.
Yeah, it's a good idea. And we've noticed as well, walking around the house, that the oak doors and the oak staircase have survived.
Yeah, everyone thinks that wood is destroyed by a flood, but actually what you'll find is those oak doors, even the front doors, they're discoloured, and internal doors need a bit of easing and adjusting.
And
as with the door frames,
yes.
They're all solid wood. The other thing I had the idea about is possibly taking the bathroom and making that blockwork and tiled, so that would be completely resilient, and your bathroom will remain unaffected.
Yes, it would. And also the flooring. We've been discussing the flooring here, because obviously this flooring through here where there weren't carpets has survived, hasn't it? So what would your suggestions for the flooring be here?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of options. One, which is very continental, we could have tile floors throughout, like you live in Spain, which a lot of people like. And you mentioned earlier using rug.
Yes, nice Indian rugs
really
thrown
nice
over it. I've been in a lot of properties like that.
So that's one option. The other option is we could keep the tiles where they are, but put a liquid DPM, which is like a membrane to stop the water.
What's a DPM?
A damp-proof membrane.
Right, okay.
So what it means is, firstly, the water can't come up from the ground, but can't get into the concrete either. So what it means is you can then put a carpet on top, and that would be a sacrificial carpet. Or so what you'd end up doing is the floor not getting wet at all. The surfaces be thrown away, but the actual floor beneath being dry, so it wouldn't have anything to dry.
No.
So the huge benefit is the ground floor and materials will be unaffected apart from the carpet.
So next question.
Yeah.
The kitchen. What do you suggest with the kitchen?
Yeah, we've got an interesting kitchen because it's oak panelled everywhere. We found plasterboard behind it, which amazingly has survived the flood, which everyone would think wouldn't survive the flood. But I think given that we're going to take some panelling off anyway to fit the kitchen, we'd probably remove that plasterboard, we would insulate the walls, but because this insulation would be hidden behind the kitchen units, how are we going to design it?
And the insulation is a closed cell, so that's sort of flood resilient. Yeah.
So we could leave the insulation on, we put the kitchen in, and that would hide the insulation, but that would be nothing to dry behind the kitchen units, and resilient kitchen units. Wouldn't need replacing either. So we need some more thinking on that, because it's a complex kitchen, but it's possible. So
really we are definitely saying not an MDF kitchen, not the usual kitchen that's always thrown away. The idea behind this house is we're going to put a flood resilient kitchen in, so come the next flood it doesn't have to be thrown away, it can be washed down, sanitised, dried and back to use.
Absolutely, and I think that at the Building Research Establishment they've got an example of one of those kitchens which it's been designed to survive a flood. Obviously, the length of time a property is flooded can have implications for any kitchen. But as long as it's a sensible, reasonable period in the property, we'd expect to save the kitchen.
Good, that's the idea. Thank you very much, Ian. Right, so Stephen, this residential property is going to pose something of a challenge for me. First of all, the stud partitions, I need to ask you about that. I'd also like to ask you about the insulation, what insulation you'd advise. We're aware that this property has got some resistance measures, and we're going to provide some more normal looking kite mark doors as well as the sort of belt and the braces. So in a lower flood, we hope the water would stay out. This flood, the water went to windowsill height. So it's somewhat challenging. We know it's going to flood again. So with that, we're going to perhaps embrace some kind of sacrificial measures. And, you know, really just thinking outside the box, and lots of suggestions from you as to what we could do with this home.
Yeah. Well, I think you're absolutely right. There's a big chance that water's going to come in here and get past those resistance measures again. But we see here the stud partition, and the house has been formed substantially, dividing areas up in this way. One option might be to replace the timber studs with masonry block. So we build up masonry partitions, lightweight concrete block, possibly aircrete or a lightweight aggregate block with a resilient plaster finish on it. The aircrete block, you can actually chase openings in for your electrical services, so you can have your wall mounted sockets, hopefully a little bit higher than this one, and change the form of construction from the stud partition to the lightweight masonry block.
And then what about the walls, the existing walls that are here?
Okay. So what we've got external stonework, and internally we've got a concrete block. And on top of that has been put either the plasterboard or, on this side, insulation and plasterboard. It would make sense because 365 days of the year we have to try to keep our homes warm. And so as much of the insulation that we can retain as possible, but a resilient insulation, a closed cell insulation, particularly at the lower levels, the lower half of the wall here. Resilient insulation, on top of the concrete block, a cavity, and then a resilient wall board. Something like magnesium oxide board or a cement-based board. And of course we do have a risk of water getting in behind there, but if we leave that cavity, we can hope to dry it out without removing all the material.
Another option we did discuss would be tiling.
Yes, yeah. So we've got a solid concrete floor here with underfloor heating system. You can see we've got existing tiling going down the hallway into the kitchen there. If that tiling idea was extended right throughout the ground floor, the tiles could be extended up the wall, and you could look at doing that to various heights and combining that with the resilient wall board and insulation behind it, make for a good resilient finish.
And of course we've got to use waterproof adhesive and grout every time we do that. That's a given.
And fully bed our tiles into that waterproof material. Yeah,
that's true. And what about the kitchen?
Yeah,
because that is largely wood panelled, isn't it?
It is, and it looks frightening.
It does.
So I would be tempted to take that wood panelling off, get back to the masonry walls, see what's behind there, and build up again insulation, cavity, resilient wall board, and decoration. Of course, once we put the kitchen units back in, a resilient kitchen, it's going to look a lot better.
Yes, got to be a flood resilient kitchen, because that's the main purpose of this. So
yeah.
When it floods again, not if, but when it floods again, the kitchen can just be washed down and sanitised and reused again.
That's right, and we know we've got various options on that, whether it's not just stainless steel or plastic. We discovered a composite material, a kitchen supplier, which we've used at the flood resilient repair house down at BRE at Watford, and that's a very stylish kitchen that can be used anywhere.
Fabulous, thank you very much, and thank you for your time. Wish me luck.
Good luck, Mary.
I need it. Thank you.